Ukraine. Drones attack Putin's guest house. Then this happened. In the dead of night, something unseen crossed the Black Sea. What happened next wasn't just an attack. It was a signal that the rules of war had changed. Let's talk about it. The Black Sea at 2 o'clock a.m. is not silent. It is a cacophony of natural noise that human ears cannot hear, but sensors pick up in agonizing detail. The slapping of waves against the hull, the wind shearing off the crests, the thermal layers of the water shifting. All of it creates a background static that radar operators must filter out. On the night of September 21st, 2025, that static was the only cover for one of the most audacious maritime operations in modern military history. Deep in the dark waters, miles off the coast of Crimea, a small fleet of uncrewed vessels bobbed in the swell. They were not the massive destroyers of the 20th century, nor were they the submarines of the Cold War. They were Magura V5s, sleek, black, carbon fiber predators that had already rewritten the rules of naval engagement. But tonight, they were not hunting ships. They were hunting a building, and not just any building. They were targeting the Foros Sanatorium, the crown jewel of the Crimean coast, a sprawling, fortified luxury retreat that served as a command node and a personal sanctuary for the Russian elite. What happened over the next 45 minutes would not only obliterate a $50 million facility, but would also expose the fatal flaw in multi-billion-dollar air defense networks when faced with a $280,000 swarm using a tactic the world had never seen before: the ghost chain. To understand the magnitude of this strike, we must first understand the battlefield. For the first 2 years of the war, the Black Sea was a Russian lake. The Black Sea Fleet, headquartered in Sevastopol, projected power with impunity, launching Kaliber cruise missiles into Ukrainian cities and enforcing a suffocating blockade on grain exports. But that dominance began to fracture, first with the sinking of the cruiser Moskva, and then, more systematically, with the arrival of the sea drones. By late 2024, Ukraine had effectively chased the Russian surface fleet out of the western Black Sea. But the peninsula itself, Crimea, remained a fortress. The coast was bristling with coastal defense missile systems, electronic warfare, jamming stations, and the much-vaunted S-400 Triumph air defense batteries. These systems were designed to stop NATO aircraft and ballistic missiles. They were designed to track high-altitude bombers and supersonic threats. They were not designed for what was coming. The Magura V5 is a masterpiece of asymmetric warfare. Developed by the Main Directorate of Intelligence of Ukraine, or GUR, it is officially classified as a maritime autonomous guard, unmanned robotic apparatus. In layman's terms, it is a suicide boat, but calling it that does a disservice to its sophistication. At 5.5 meters long, with a range of 800 kilometers and a top speed of nearly 50 miles per hour, the Magura is a low-profile stealth assassin. It rides low in the water, barely protruding above the waves, making it a nightmare for radar to distinguish from sea clutter. Its payload is typically 320 kilograms of high explosives, enough to break the keel of a corvette. But on this September night, the Maguras approaching Foros were not carrying their standard warheads. They had been retrofitted for a different mission. They were motherships. This was the debut of the ghost chain tactic, a concept born out of desperation and ingenuity in the drone labs of Kiev. The problem facing Ukrainian planners was simple. How do you strike a target on the southern coast of Crimea, protected by layers of overlapping air defense, without using expensive Storm Shadow or ATACMS missiles that are easily intercepted? The answer was to bring the airfield to the target. The Magura V-5s had been modified to carry a deployable cargo, 6 OSA FPV drones each. The OSA, or WASP, is a high acrobatic quadcopter manufactured by the Ukrainian company First Contact. It is small, fast, and lethal. With a payload capacity of over 3 kilograms and a top speed of 150 kilometers per hour, the OSA is usually a short-range battlefield weapon used to hunt tanks and infantry in the trenches of the Donbass. It has a battery life of only 15 minutes. This limited range usually ties it to a ground operator just a few miles away. But by piggybacking on the Magura V5, the OSA's effective range was extended to the entire width of the Black Sea. The operation began under the cover of a new moon. The Magura group, designated Wolfpack Alpha, navigated autonomously using inertial guidance systems to avoid jamming. Russian electronic warfare units in Crimea, specifically the forceful Krasuka-4 systems, were active, blasting the airwaves with noise to blind GPS satellites. The Maguras didn't care. They ran silent, using visual navigation verified by coastal landmarks, the silhouette of the Crimean mountains against the starry sky. As they reached the launch point, 10 miles off the coast of Foros, the engines cut to a low hum. The target was visible now, a glittering complex of lights nestled against the cliffs. Foros is more than a sanatorium. It is a symbol of power. Historically, the vacation spot of Soviet general secretaries, including Gorbachev, it had been appropriated by the Russian state and turned into a fortress of luxury. Intelligence reports indicated that on this night, the facility was hosting a high-level strategic planning meeting involving senior naval commanders and intelligence officers, discussing the future of the Black Sea grain blockade. At 02:15 a.m., the Magura V-5s opened their modified hatches. This was the moment of maximum vulnerability. A stationary boat is an easy target for thermal cameras. But the ghost chain tactic had a solution for that too. As the OSA drones lifted off from the sea-tossed decks of the drone boats, the first wave of drones didn't head for the building. They headed up. Straight up. These lead drones were equipped not with explosives, but with chaff dispensers. Chaff is an old technology, dating back to World War II. Strips of aluminum, or metallized glass fibers, cut to half the wavelength of the enemy radar. When released, they form a cloud that reflects radar waves, creating a massive false echo. The lead OSAs climbed to 2,000 feet and detonated their chaff payloads. Simultaneously, the Maguras on the surface began emitting high-frequency signals that mimicked the radar signature of a much larger attacking force, perhaps a squadron of fighter jets or a flight of cruise missiles. The Russian radar operators at the S-400 battery on the cliffs above Foros saw their screens light up. Suddenly, out of the empty sea, a massive attack formation appeared to be materializing. The ghost chain was active. The radar computers, overwhelmed by the sudden appearance of multiple large targets and the blinding reflection of the chaff clouds, went into automatic engagement modes. The S-400s, designed to kill jets at long range, slewed their massive turrets and fired. Multi-million-dollar missiles roared into the night sky, chasing phantom signals and clouds of aluminum foil. While the Russian air defense was distracted, fighting ghosts in the sky, the kill team went to work. 6 OSI FPV drones, armed with shaped charge warheads, skimmed the waves at 60 miles per hour. They stayed below the radar horizon, less than 5 meters above the water, guided by a sophisticated AI navigation system that didn't rely on GPS. This AI, trained on thousands of hours of coastline footage, recognized the terrain features of the Foros Bay. It saw the pier, the main building, the specific wing where the VIP suites were located. The pilots, operating from a secure bunker hundreds of miles away in Odessa, watched the feeds via a Starlink relay beamed from the Magura motherships. The latency was high, but the AI assistants smoothed out the controls, locking onto the thermal signatures of the target. The Russian defenses were not completely blind. The Pantsir S-1 systems, designed for point defense, have optical sensors that can spot low-flying drones. But the Ghost chain had one more trick. The chaotic electromagnetic environment created by the Magura jammers and the chaff clouds wreaked havoc on the Pantsir's fire control radar. The system hesitated, trying to distinguish the real threats from the false echoes. In modern warfare, hesitation is death. By the time the Pantsir operators switched to manual optical tracking, the OSAs were already inside the perimeter. The first OSA struck the communications array on the roof of the main guest house. The explosion severed the secure line back to Moscow, plunging the meeting inside into digital darkness. The second and third drones hit the generator building and the security command post, disabling the local jamming equipment and blinding the guards. The remaining 3 drones, the heavy hitters, dove on the main conference hall. The shaped charges, designed to punch through tank armor, easily penetrated the reinforced concrete roof of the sanatorium. The impact was devastating. The $50 million retreat, renovated with Italian marble and gold leaf, was turned into a smoking ruin in seconds. The shaped charges detonated inside the structure, creating an overpressure event that blew out every window in the complex. The intelligence value of the strike was immediately apparent. The meeting was disrupted, plans were scattered, and the psychological blow was immense. The message was clear. There is no sanctuary. If Ukraine could strike a heavily defended VIP facility with cheap, expendable drones, then no fuel depot, no ammunition dump, and no command post in Crimea was safe. The analysis of the strike reveals a staggering cost asymmetry. The entire Ukrainian operation, the Magura boats which were recovered, the OSA drones, the fuel, and the logistics cost approximately $80,000. The damage to the Russian side included a $50 million facility, the expenditure of several S-400 interceptor missiles, each costing over $1 million, and the incalculable loss of operational security and strategic planning time. This ratio, nearly 200 to 1 in terms of direct financial damage, does not even account for the strategic value. Following the attack, the Russian Black Sea Fleet was forced to move its planning operations even further east, to Novorossiysk, effectively ceding control of the western Crimean coast. This retreat allowed Ukraine to expand its grain corridor, ensuring that millions of tons of wheat and corn could leave the ports of Odessa without threat of interception. The ghost chain tactic represents a paradigm shift in naval warfare. It demonstrates that the distinction between naval and aerial threats is blurring. A boat is no longer just a boat. It is an aircraft carrier. A drone is no longer just a surveillance tool. It is a precision munition. The integration of AI navigation allowed the drones to operate in a GPS-denied environment, rendering millions of dollars of Russian electronic warfare equipment useless. The use of chaff, a piece of World War II tech, to defeat 21st century radar shows that ingenuity often trumps raw technological superiority. The footage released by the GUR in the days following the attack confirmed the extent of the destruction. High-resolution video from a reconnaissance drone, likely a fixed-wing loitering munition that arrived shortly after the strike, showed the roof of the Foros sanatorium collapsed and the surrounding grounds scorched. But perhaps the most telling image was not of the destruction, but of the Russian response. Satellite imagery showed a chaotic dispersal of naval assets from the nearby bays. The fear was palpable. The Russian command realized that their red lines had been crossed, and their defenses had been outsmarted by a swarm of plastic and carbon fiber. This operation also highlights the evolving role of the Magura V5. Originally designed as a kamikaze surface vessel, it has evolved into a multi-purpose platform. We have seen it equipped with R-73 air-to-air missiles to hunt helicopters. We have seen it used for mine laying. And now, we have seen it used as a launch pad for aerial swarms. This modularity is the hallmark of Ukrainian defense innovation. Lacking the massive industrial base of Russia, Ukraine relies on agility and adaptation. The Magura platform is open architecture, allowing engineers to bolt on new capabilities as the tactical situation demands. The strategic implications of the Foros strike extend far beyond the Black Sea. It serves as a case study for military planners around the world. The vulnerability of static, high-value targets to low-cost swarm attacks is now undeniable. The S-400 system, marketed by Russia as the ultimate air defense shield, was bypassed not by a hypersonic missile or a stealth bomber, but by a ghost chain of decoys and quadcopters. This will likely impact the export potential of Russian arms, as nations like India and Turkey watch their expensive purchases fail to stop cheap drones. Furthermore, the attack on Putin's guest house carries a heavy symbolic weight. Foros was not just a military target. It was a symbol of the Russian elite's entitlement to Crimea. It was where they went to relax, to enjoy the spoils of the annexation. By striking it, Ukraine pierced the bubble of normalcy that the Kremlin tries to maintain. It brought the war to the very doorstep of the decision-makers. It demonstrated that the special military operation was not a distant conflict in the Donbass, but a fire that could burn down their own vacation homes as we will. Look at the verified data from September 2025. The dominance of Ukraine in the drone domain is clear. While Russia relies on mass-produced Iranian Shahed drones for terror bombing of civilians, Ukraine focuses on precision strikes against military and strategic assets. The Shahed is a blunt instrument. The Osa and Magura are scalpels. The ghost chain attack resulted in 0 civilian casualties, despite being executed in a populated area. The AI targeting algorithms were strictly geo-fenced to the sanatorium compound, ensuring that the nearby town of Foros was untouched. This adherence to the laws of armed conflict, even while executing a high-stakes decapitation strike, distinguishes the Ukrainian approach. The success of this operation was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of months of shaping operations. Throughout the summer of 2025, Ukrainian forces had been systematically degrading the air defense network in Crimea. They used Storm Shadow missiles to take out radar sites on the Tarkhankut Peninsula. They used ATAK-EMS to hit the airfields at Belbek and Saki. These strikes forced the Russians to move their air defense assets around, creating gaps in coverage. The planners of the Foros raid identified one of these gaps, a blind spot caused by the mountainous terrain of the southern coast, and exploited it. The Magura boat slipped through this radar shadow, getting close enough to launch the Osa swarm before they could be detected. The aftermath of the strike saw a flurry of activity in the Russian Ministry of Defense. There were purges of the commanders responsible for the air defense of Crimea. The Black Sea Fleet underwent yet another reorganization. But these were reactive measures. The initiative had already been lost. Ukraine had dictated the time, place and method of the engagement. They had forced Russia to spend millions of dollars firing missiles at aluminum foil. They had humiliated the Kremlin on its own territories. The ghost chain tactic is likely to be copied. Military analysts predict that we will soon see similar tactics employed in other theaters. The concept of a drone carrier, a small, unmanned vessel launching aerial drones, is a game changer for literal warfare. It allows a small navy to project air power without the need for massive aircraft carriers. It allows for saturation attacks that can overwhelm even the most advanced defenses. And it is cost-effective. A fleet of 50 Magura-type vessels, each carrying a swarm of FPV drones, costs less than a single F-35 fighter jet. In the weeks following the attack, the grain corridor traffic reached pre-war levels. The insurance rates for ships entering Ukrainian ports dropped, as the threat from the Russian Navy was perceived to be significantly reduced. The Foros strike had achieved its strategic objective. It pushed the Russian threat envelope back, securing the economic lifeline of Ukraine. The wheat that flowed out of Odessa in October 2025 fed millions in Africa and the Middle East, a direct result of the bravery of the drone operators and the ingenuity of the engineers who built the ghost chain. The technological breakdown of the OSA drones used in the attack reveals the rapid pace of iteration. These were not the standard off-the-shelf components. They featured custom-molded frames designed to reduce radar cross-section. The motors were high-efficiency brushless variants that provided the extra speed needed to close the distance before the enemy could react. And the warheads were a dual-stage design, with a precursor charge to blow through reactive armor or concrete, followed by a main charge to cause maximum internal damage. This level of customization shows that Ukraine has moved beyond MacGyver solutions and into industrial-scale production of specialized military hardware. The Magura V5s also showed upgrades. The communication link was no longer a simple Starlink terminal. It was a bonded system, combining satellite, cellular, and mesh radio links to ensure connectivity even in a heavy jamming environment. The ghost chain software that coordinated the swarm behavior was capable of autonomous decision-making. If one drone was shot down, the others would dynamically reassign targets to ensure the primary mission objectives were met. This swarm intelligence is the holy grail of drone warfare, and Ukraine is testing it in the field, while other nations are still studying it in the lab. As the sun rose over Foros on September 22nd, the smoke was still rising from the ruins of the sanatorium. The once pristine white facade was blackened and crumbled. The frantic movement of emergency vehicles and the cordon of FSB agents marked the site as a crime scene. But in Kiev, the mood was one of quiet professional satisfaction. The mission was a complete success. The ghost chain had worked. The message had been delivered, and the war for the Black Sea had taken another decisive turn. The significance of this event cannot be overstated. It marked the moment when the balance of fear shifted. For years, the threat of Russian escalation had hung over the conflict. But with the Foros strike, Ukraine showed that it could escalate too, smartly, precisely, and devastatingly. They didn't need nuclear weapons or massive fleets. They just needed a few boats, a few drones, and the courage to use them in ways no one had ever imagined. The attack on Putin's guest house was not just a military victory. It was a glimpse into the future of warfare, where the small eat the large, and where the ghost in the machine is the deadliest weapon of all. As we analyze the verified data from late 2025, it becomes evident that the ghost chain operation was a pivot point. It accelerated the obsolescence of traditional naval platforms in enclosed seas like the Black Sea. It validated the doctrine of mosquito fleets, massed small combatants overwhelming larger, singular targets, and it cemented Ukraine's status not just as a participant in the war, but as the dominant innovator. The Russian military machine, for all its size and bluster, was shown to be rigid, reactive, and ultimately vulnerable to the agile, tech-forward approach of the Ukrainian Defense Forces. The wreckage of the Foros Sanatorium stands as a monument to this new reality. It is a reminder that in the 21st century, security cannot be bought with concrete and missile batteries alone. It requires adaptability. It requires the ability to anticipate the next evolution of warfare. On that night in September, Russia was fighting the last war. Ukraine was fighting the next one. And the result was never in doubt. In the broader context of the conflict, the Foros attack also had a demoralizing effect on the Russian officer corps. The realization that their own leadership's safe havens were defenseless eroded trust in the chain of command. Intercepted communications in the days following the strike revealed panic and finger-pointing among the Crimean garrison. "If they can hit Foros," one officer was heard saying on an unsecured line, "they can hit us anywhere." This psychological degradation is a key component of Ukraine's strategy, the destruction of the enemy's will to fight. The ghost chain operation will be studied in military academies for decades. It is a textbook example of multi-domain operations, combining surface, air, and cyber warfare into a single, synchronized strike. It showcased the power of deception, the value of intelligence, and the lethality of low-cost precision munitions. But for the people of Ukraine, it was something simpler. It was proof that they could strike back. It was proof that their enemy was not invincible. And it was proof that victory, while hard-won, was possible. As the winter of 2025 approaches, the lessons of Foros are being applied across the front. New variants of the ghost chain tactic are appearing in the skies over the Donbass and the steppes of Zaporizhzhia. The drone war continues to evolve at a breakneck pace. But the night the Maguras and Osas took down Putin's guest house will always be remembered as the night the rules changed. The night the ghosts came out of the sea and burned the fortress down. This operation also underscored the vital importance of the Black Sea grain corridor. Before the strike, insurance companies were hesitant to cover ships entering the war zone, citing the threat of Russian missile attacks. The Russian Black Sea Fleet, though diminished, still posed a fleet-in-being threat, a potential force that could sortie and sink merchant vessels. The Foros strike, by forcing the Russian command to retreat further east and exposing the weakness of their air defense umbrella, effectively neutralized this threat. The data shows a 40% increase in grain shipments in the month following the attack. This is not just a statistic. It represents food security for developing nations and vital revenue for the Ukrainian economy. The link between a drone strike on a luxury villa and the price of bread in Cairo might not be immediately obvious, but in the interconnected world of modern strategy, it is direct and causal. Furthermore, the environmental impact of the strike was surprisingly contained. Unlike attacks on oil depots or chemical plants, which release toxic plumes, the precision nature of the shaped charges meant the damage was structural and kinetic. The surrounding Foros Park, a 19th century botanical garden home to rare species of cedar and juniper, was largely unharmed. This precision was intentional. Ukrainian planners were acutely aware of the propaganda value Russia would extract from any collateral damage to the park. By surgically excising the military political target while sparing the cultural and natural heritage, Ukraine maintained the moral high ground. The Magura V-5's role in this operation also highlighted the swarming capability that had long been theoretical. In previous attacks, Magura has operated in small groups of 2 or 3. In the Foros raid, the Wolfpack Alpha consisted of 10 vessels, coordinating 10 autonomous boats in high sea states, while simultaneously managing the launch of 60 aerial drones, 6 per boat, required a level of network complexity that rivals the most advanced US or Chinese capabilities. The Ghost Chain software managed this traffic, ensuring that drones didn't collide and that the electromagnetic spectrum wasn't cluttered with conflicting signals. This software is now one of Ukraine's most guarded secrets. The verified information from this period also points to a significant failure of Russian intelligence. The preparations for such a complex operation, the modification of the boats, the training of the pilots, the staging of the assets, went completely undetected by the FSB. This intelligence blindness suggests that the Russian spy network in southern Ukraine has been thoroughly dismantled by the SBO's Security Service of Ukraine. It also suggests that Ukraine has mastered the art of operational security (OPSEC) in the digital age, using decoys and false radio traffic to mask their true intentions. The attack on the Foros Sanatorium on September 21, 2025, was a watershed moment. It was the convergence of technology, tactics, and strategy into a perfect storm. It demonstrated Ukraine's dominance in the unmanned sphere. It exposed the brittleness of Russian defenses, and it secured vital strategic interests in the Black Sea. As the war enters its next phase, the shadow of the Ghost Chain hangs over every Russian position. The knowledge that a swarm of silent, cheap, and lethal machines could emerge from the darkness at any moment has changed the psychology of the battlefield forever. The age of the dreadnought is over. The age of the swarm has begun. And in this new age, Ukraine is the undisputed master. Foros proved one thing: no fortress is untouchable anymore. In this new era, speed, intelligence, and swarms decide everything. Subscribe and like for more updates.